Breaking tonight, Donald Trump about to join me for a live conversation. Hello and welcome to Justice. I'm Judge Jeanine Pirro. Thanks for being with us tonight. And now my opening statement. You know, Democrat-inspired government support for the last century has become the most abusive form of suppression and oppression in our inner cities. It is keeping African Americans and minority communities from attaining not only the American dream, but a normal, safe, secure, and productive life. A supposed well-intentioned support system is chaining our minority communities to an intergenerational cycle of poverty, dependency, and depression. Now, I've spent more than 3 decades in the criminal justice system, watching crime, drugs, and gangs ravage our inner cities, drawing no distinction between children, the weak, and the elderly. But I have never heard anyone, especially someone running for office, have the audacity, the tenacity to turn a paradigm upside down the way Donald Trump did this week.
It's time for our society to address some honest and very, very difficult truths. The Democratic Party has failed and betrayed the African American community. Democratic crime policies, education policies, and economic policies have produced only more crime, more broken homes, and more poverty.
Is he right? Let's take a look. When Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton talk about the racial divide, they neglect to talk about the fact that 58% of young African Americans do not have jobs. That, in fact, they are worse off since an African American president took office. So what makes anyone think things will get better under the same policies? When Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton talk about the economic divide in this country, what have they done about it, other than Hillary Clinton magically going from dead broke to being worth more than $100 million that she'll admit to, without a business, a company, or anything other than a so-called not-for-profit corporation? And while Obama and Clinton talk about those much-needed conversations between the minority community and our law enforcement officers, they do so to the background chant, "What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them? Now." Today, more police are targeted and killed than ever before. And while Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton talk about the poor and the oppressed, the anarchists, Black Lives Matter, and Occupy Wall Street group burn down and destroy neighborhoods, where the only ones suffering are African-American mom-and-pop shops and African-American small business owners. And while they pontificate on the quality of justice for minority communities like Ferguson and Baltimore, juries, judges, and even their own Department of Justice outright reject their make-believe incendiary and divisive narrative. And in case you haven't noticed, gun crimes against African Americans in the inner cities only matter if law enforcement is involved. African American deaths, even of children on playgrounds on the south side of Chicago, just don't get the same outrage. And when this duo talk about the quality of education that young African American and minority children need to compete, they force an education bureaucracy and the unions that in turn support them, selling slick ads, while children in those communities drop out or fail on those families. No vision to help children like the lucky few who have experienced the voucher system or school choice that allows them to break the bonds of the inner city and soar their way to success. Now, take a look at these cities populated by the minority community, where murders are on the rise, where poverty is the norm, where guns are seen as the only form of protection, crime is the only way out, where hope is non-existent. And ask yourselves, Who is running these cities? Democrats. Take a look at the numbers. Chicago has had a Democratic mayor for the last 85 years. St. Louis, 67 years. Newark, 109 years. Milwaukee, 108 years. Baltimore, 49 years. And D.C., 41 years. All major cities, all where murders go up. Folks, if something just doesn't work time after time, over and over, what does it tell you? Should you keep going with it? Should you do it again? You know what? I can't say it any better than he can.
What the hell do you have to lose?
And that's my opening statement. Tell me what you think on my Facebook page or Twitter. Hashtag Judge Jeanine. And now, in a justice-exclusive, Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump joins me by phone. Good evening, Donald.
Hello, Jeanine.
You have had a banner week. I don't know how you do it, but you have given at least 4 or 5 major speeches. You have been to Louisiana. You just gave a speech this afternoon. And I couldn't help but focus on your Tuesday speech because it's my wheelhouse. So I want to ask you, do you believe that there is any chance for the inner cities to survive in light of where they are today?
Not with the people running them that are running them today, Jeanine. I mean, I know some of the people that actually are running them, and they couldn't care less. They just want the votes, and then after they get the votes, it's back to business as usual with special interests, and it's just not going to work. And the African-American people have been absolutely mistreated and abused by Democratic politicians who have taken advantage of them. And, you know, it was in my speech, and I really sort of just was reading the statistics where you have 40% that are living in poverty, 58% of the students, I mean, the young people, they can't get jobs. And, you know, it's just like a total catastrophe. The unemployment rates, everything is bad. No health care, no education, no anything. No anything. And poverty is unbelievable. And then I said, hey, wait a minute. Vote for me. What do you have to lose? I can't do worse. You can't do any worse than what these people have been doing, and I will do better. And I actually said that if you vote for me the next time in 4 years, I'll get 95% of your vote because you're going to see such a big improvement. But I said to the African-American people in all of these cities, I just looked at those numbers there, atrocious that you just put up. I said, vote for me. What do you have to lose?
But what would you do differently, Donald?
Well, I'd get jobs. For one thing, we're going to, you know, you need jobs. I'd also create spirit. We have a president who is absolutely a divider. I call him the great divider. And there is so little spirit, and there is such great division, and we need a cheerleader. I thought he was going to be a cheerleader. He's not a cheerleader. I mean, look at, as an example, he's up playing golf with his friends and doesn't know what's happening down in Louisiana. I was there. And I want to say it is so sad when you look at these houses that are absolutely destroyed. Even though they're standing, they have to be taken apart and put back together again.
Well, I have to tell you, Donald, my family lost a house in a flood, and it is horrible. But I did see there was a gentleman in Louisiana. It was on the internet. He was crying because he met you, and he couldn't believe that you actually went there and that he actually had the opportunity to meet you. But, you know, the president had no plans to go to Louisiana. And then after you were there yesterday, we now hear that he plans on going there next week. Do you think you shamed him into going?
Well, I don't know about that. Perhaps so. I'm not looking to have done that. But I will say this. I think next week is too late. Tuesday is too late. He's going to go on Tuesday. And I just think that you go. What you do is tell your golf buddies tomorrow morning that you won't be able to make it. Hop in the plane, you know, nice 747, very old, a lot of fumes pulling into the air. But nevertheless, hop into the plane and go down to Louisiana and see what's going on, because it is a mess. And the Army Corps of Engineers could have solved a lot of it. You know, they were telling me one of the big problems, the Army Corps of Engineers, under his jurisdiction for a long time, almost 8 years, had they done certain changes that everybody has been begging them to do, the floods would have been at a much, much lower level.
And you would think after Katrina that they would have figured this stuff out.
Well, they just couldn't get them to move. They said they couldn't get them to move. They wouldn't do it. They just couldn't get them to move. And you know, that's government, unless you have a leader at the top.
All right. You know, Donald, one of the things that is happening as we're speaking is there apparently was another terror attack in Turkey. And although we don't know all of the details, what we do know and the bare facts are that it appears that there was a wedding in Turkey, and it was an outdoor wedding. And it appears that there was possibly a suicide bomb, or as many as 22 people dead. And there are reports, and you know as well as I do, that all of these things change. You know, when we first hear things, they may not necessarily be true. But what would you do as president to stem all of these attacks and you know, the tide of these kinds of attacks?
Well, we have to be much tougher than we are right now. We have to be less politically correct. We have to be so vigilant with respect to other people reporting, people in the community reporting what's going on. I heard about the attack in Turkey. It looks like it's radical Islamic terrorism again, and I'm sure, of course, you know, the president won't use that term, but it looks like that, and we'll have to find out. But, you know, I'm sure you wouldn't be totally shocked if it was.
Well,
but
certainly.
It is just a horrible thing that's going on. Nobody's seen anything like this. I mean, you go back to medieval times when they chopped off heads. It's like nobody's seen what we're seeing now: drowning in steel cages, chopping off heads, burying in sand. Nobody's seen this, Jeanine. This is medieval times.
It is barbaric. You know, Donna, one of the things that I'm going to do is I'm going to be going next to Dinesh D'Souza, who did the movie Hillary's America,
right,
which is it is a discussion of some of the things that you've talked about in terms of the inner city and Democrats and what has happened to a lot of the people in the inner cities. And I hope that you're able to see that movie, because it's very interesting, very consistent with where you're going. And I'm going to ask you one last kind of fun question.
Go ahead.
All right. As you prep for these debates, who's standing in for Hillary?
Well, you know, so far I have not really given it too much thought. I didn't prep for the other debates and the primaries. I studied for them, but I didn't really prep per se. I guess the standard thing is you'd have to. You would be a very, very good. You are something.
I was going to offer myself up, but I work for Fox, and everybody knows I love you, so everybody knows we're friends. But I'm not blonde, so I don't think it would work.
I know. That's
Plus,
right.
I don't wear pantsuits.
But we'll get somebody, I guess. But you know, the main thing is, I just think it's something we have to win. We have to win that election, or we're not going to have the judges. You know, the justices of the Supreme Court, by and of themselves, is such a big factor in this election, and it's a factor that some people talk about a lot because they know how important. Other people don't know about it. But you will have, Justice Scalia, who that was unexpected, but all of a sudden, before you even start, you're picking one. But it could be as many as 4, could even be as many as 5 during a 4-year term, probably the most ever for a president for a 4-year term. So
very important.
We will work hard, and we will do a job, and we will make America great again.
All right. I want to say one more thing. This is just coming across. LA Times poll. Trump takes a half-a-point lead over Clinton.
Oh, wow. That's very good.
So you have had a banner week after a rough couple of weeks.
Well, I don't know. The press gave me a rough couple of weeks. They'll take what I say, and they will change it and totally cut it up and dice it up and then say... and then study it for 3 days.
Yeah, but you know what, Donald?
Very dishonest.
Just keep doing what you did this week. You hit it out of the park.
I will, Jeanine.
I
will.
Donald Trump, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Jeanine. Thank you.
And if you haven't seen Hillary's America, the latest effort from writer and director Dinesh D'Souza, it is an eye-opening look at the Democratic candidate for president as well as the party that she represents. Take a look at this.
Today claim to be the party of progress. But where's the progress? For blacks, they've created new urban plantations. For Indians, reservations. And for poor immigrants, barrios, ghettos, and slums. They put their voters in there and make sure they stay there. The only progress we see is progress for them. More wealth, more power, more control over America and over our lives. The Clintons are worthy successors of a tradition from Andrew Jackson through Woodrow Wilson.
Wow. With me now, author and director of Hillary's America, Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh, I have to tell you, I have seen that twice. And my hat's off to you, and you know how much I think of that movie, and I even have the book. I read it, and I even, you know, talked to Donald Trump about it. I thought it was an incredible discussion. And what I don't think most Americans realize is the history of the Democrat Party as it relates to slavery, the taking away of Indian lands, putting Indians on reservations, and as it relates to civil rights in this country. Now, I don't want to get into a long discussion of it, but I want to talk to you about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments. So tell me about those amendments and how they were voted on as it relates to Democrats and Republicans.
Well, the 13th Amendment was the amendment that permanently abolished slavery. The Republicans pushed it. The Democrats unanimously, as a bloc, opposed it. But it passed. The 14th Amendment granted equal rights under the law. If I'm not mistaken, not a single Democrat voted for it.
Right.
The Republicans once again got it through. The 15th Amendment was the right to vote. Republicans pushed it through. The Democrats again in uniform opposition. Now, why is this important? It's important because Democrats today will claim credit for the civil rights movement of the 1960s. The Civil Rights Act of 64, the Voting Rights Act of 65. But those laws were all based upon constitutional provisions that had been put into the Constitution 100 years previously by the Republican Party, and their enforcement had been blocked for almost a century by the Democratic Party. So that's why this history is so important. The Democrats to this day claim to be the party of the good guys, of the little guys, of minorities, of women. Now, the real history is that the Democrats blocked women's suffrage.
Yeah.
They were the party of the Ku Klux Klan. They were the party of immigration restrictions,
Dinesh,
forced sterilization.
Dinesh, nobody believes that. If I went out and did my man on the street, not that they're geniuses out there, but I asked them, everybody would swear on their homes that the Republicans are the ones who are the KKK and all that. Why?
Well, the funny thing is that once they see our movie, what the left is now saying is, yes, Dinesh, we admit it. You're right. It's true. But it's ancient history. It's all so long ago. Women's suffrage was 100 years ago. And I say, wait a minute. We're not just talking about women's suffrage. In the 1960s, chauvinist Democrats tried to kill the Civil Rights Act of 1964 with a gender amendment. It backfired on them. But all of this is not as far back in the past as you think. And the reason it's important to highlight it is it shows the Democratic narrative to be a lie, and it strips the moral capital away from the Democratic Party.
All right, let me ask you then, in terms of the opening statement and the inner cities and the Democrat Party and the issue of crime, and we're going to be going to David Clark. How is it that the Democrat Party, in terms of your perspective, is continuing the crime issue and not creating a safe haven for the minority community?
So in the book and the movie, I use a controversial phrase. It's the Democratic urban plantation. And the reason I use that phrase is that there are so many chilling similarities between the old slave plantations, the rural plantations that the Democratic Party used to run, and what's going on in the inner cities. So in the old slave plantations, if you look at what life was like, you had ramshackle dwellings, broken families, a lot of illegitimacy, a lot of violence necessary to hold the place together because slavery was based on coercion. Everybody had a meager living. You'd get health care, for example, but no one ever got ahead. A lot of nihilism, a lot of hopelessness, a lot of despair.
Sounds
well,
like
that's
today.
Exactly what you see today,
right.
Not just for inner city blacks, by the way.
Coming
you see
up
it
against
on
the break. Dinesh, we'll get your book. Dinesh D'Souza, thanks for being with us. You heard Donald Trump and I talking about law and order in America.